My name is Francine Manansala, and I'm the president of the Clean Air Society of Australia and New Zealand, and I'm also an air quality consultant at EMM. Today I have the honour of speaking with Tim Flannery in the lead up to our conference this year. But before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm on today, which is the Darug people of the Eora Nation, and also to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So thank you, Tim, for sitting down again and having this chat with us today, and also for being the headline speaker at our Clean Air Society and of Australia and New Zealand conference this year. The conference will be held from the 17th to the 21st of May, and for the first time, due to unprecedented events, it will be held virtually. So I mention unprecedented because the theme of the conference this year is air quality in unprecedented times. And I know this is something that you've been discussing recently and also in your recent books. So what key messages can our conference delegates expect to hear from your talk at our conference this year?
Well, Francine, I'll be presenting the bigger picture of climate change and where we're at, and also the confluence between the whole climate change issue and air quality, which is very, very interesting. So the basic message is that we are really rapidly running out of time to address climate change, that we need to make a success of the meetings this year, and we need to develop really deep commitments to not just cutting emissions, which is essential, but also to making sure that we are prepared for what is going to come. So there'll be changes over the next decade or two, which will impact various elements of our society and our biodiversity that we need to be prepared for. So we need to adapt to what's unavoidable and be prepared for the rest. And we also need to start, quite frankly, looking for the equivalent of a vaccine. We need to develop drawdown, a holistic package, which will get us back down to safe levels of carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere. So that's basically what I'll be talking about.
Great. I think our members will really be looking forward to hearing about that and having some robust discussion amongst themselves and potentially even with yourself after your talk. And I know our other plenary speakers are covering issues such as air quality and climate change and the bushfires and COVID and citizen science. So I think all of these talks will complement each other really well.
Yeah.
You've obviously done a lot of work on climate change, looking into long-term future projections and so forth. So we were just interested in your view on how air quality sits within that broader picture and what you think the long-term implications on air pollution might be as a result of the change in climate and the key areas of action that you think should be looked into in Australia and New Zealand.
Sure. Look, I think it's becoming ever more clear that air quality has a massive impact upon human health. Yeah. So we've seen some tremendous studies out of the US where a number of coal-fired power plants have been closed and incidence of asthma has dropped dramatically in those societies and continues to drop year after year. So we can quantify that in terms of the many, many millions of dollars saved on the health budget, let alone the sort of quality of life improvements that people experience as a result of that. So I think as we address climate change and we stop burning as much material for our energy, we will improve air quality, which will be fantastic. But the downside of the climate change equation is that I very much fear that particulate pollution from what we could call natural phenomena will increase. So we saw that with the bushfires in Sydney this last the summer, the angry summer, where we had months of dreadful levels of pollution that killed 10 times as many people as the fires themselves killed directly.
Yeah.
So that air quality issue is going to be massive from bushfires. We're also seeing air quality issues with dust, particularly in places like Beijing that have seasonal air quality problems. As the climate dries, as the soil becomes unstable, those dust pollution episodes in places like Beijing are increasing. So I think there's going to be a big job for air quality experts out there, but many of the sources will be different, I think, as we move into what's an industrially cleaner future, but a more unstable climate.
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated equation, isn't it? That's not one area that you can solve and look at other areas. But no, we've definitely seen, I think, a shift in particular the extraction industry here over the last few years, with some, as you know, big projects not getting approved and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see where the government takes that going forward and how quickly as well.
For sure, yeah. If I could just say, I think that the work that you people do in terms of air quality is so critically important, because very few of us understand how intimate the connection is between our bodies and this great aerial ocean we call the atmosphere. You know, these molecules can cross over that have a massive impact on us deep in our lungs.
Absolutely.
And we're all joined to this commonality, this great aerial ocean. And as it changes, so our health changes. It's a really simple equation at that level.
Absolutely right. You have a new book called The Climate Cure, which discusses the climate emergency in the COVID-19 era and the dialogue, or sometimes the lack of dialogue, between and from governments and the community and scientists about important air quality and climate change issues. The Clean Air Society's conference is always really well attended by a broad group of regulators, governments, consultants, industry, researchers, and academia. How important do you think it is, especially now that we continue to meet at events such as our conference, to understand the science behind the issues, but also look forward towards solutions?
Look, I think at this time in the state of our kind of interaction, I guess, with nature, it is critically important. We're heading into now a very urgent phase of climate action, and that will have implications right across the industrial spectrum and across the clean air spectrum. So it is vital that we keep meeting and discussing and learning about how we're going to manage this transition. I mean, people don't realise that, you know, that the 2050 target, that's looking too late. You know, there are many scientists who say we've got to move faster than that, and that will mean a massive and disruptive transition. So, but we've left things so late now, there are no choices. So meetings like this are hugely important in terms of spreading the message, learning from each other, and preparing for a different future.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think our members would agree as well. Just touching on that, do you think that it is realistic to achieve a goal that's sooner than 2050, or is it too late?
Look, I don't know whether it's realistic or not. It's a very complex equation to look at. What I do know is that each year we leave it, it's going to get less and less realistic. So starting now gives us the best chance. Yeah.
Recent times, being COVID times, have inevitably involved a greater shift to the online world, communication through media, but also a stronger social media presence. What do you think the effect of social media and the media in general has had on communicating the science of air quality during this time?
That's a very interesting question. I think there's pluses and minuses to the way we're doing things now with Zoom. I mean, clearly we save a lot of emissions by meeting virtually, but we also miss something in terms of meeting people face to face and seeing them at the conference dinner and talking about things we might have in common that lead to more enduring bonds, you know?
Absolutely.
So, so I think there'll always be a need for a bit of a mix. Perhaps we'll have less frequent face-to-face meetings as people did a century ago, you know, when they had to travel the world by ship to have a meeting like this. But you know, I think overall it's probably an improvement.
Yeah. I think we've definitely seen in our society over the last year with a lot of working from home that people are actually wanting to get online and have these discussions, perhaps even more than we have before. We've had a lot of technical events that have been probably better attended than ever before. So people obviously want to keep talking about these issues and meeting, even if it is just virtually. So
yeah, that's great.
Great. So I'll just finish up here with one last but very important question. The Clean Air Society strongly supports our emerging air quality professionals, or our EAQPs as we call them. Reflecting on your early career and what you know now, what key messages would you give to our EAQPs to inspire them in adding a value to critical air quality or climate change issues?
What I'd like to say to them is that the work they do is highly technical. It's very difficult, and it's often seems to be ignored at the political level because there's a whole lot of special interests that can push back against the work that your experts are doing. But you've got to keep going. You know, the work you're doing is so important. Just think of every child that you help avoid getting asthma. You know, that is a massive, massive return for your work. So I would just say keep at it, never give up. It is tough. You've gone into a tough field, just like I have with climate change, but we have to keep going. And, you know, we will create a better world. We will. It just is going to take a huge amount of dedication and determination, and never be silenced. Stand up and do what you think's right.
Oh, that's some great advice. I think our EAQPs, they're a really passionate and enthusiastic bunch. So I think they'll get a lot out of what you've just said to them. So that wraps up the interview part of this session. So thank you so much again, Tim, for being a part of this.